My son texted me, "Mom, you don't need to come. My in-laws don't want you there." I had already picked out my dress, laid the expensive gift on the bed, and prepared for the party that I was paying for. My in-laws don't want you there. I read the message once, then twice, then 3 times. The words didn't change. I called my son, but the call was declined. I called Mrs. Lucia, my daughter-in-law's mother, but her number was blocked. My breathing grew heavy. My hands trembled. When I lifted my head and looked in the mirror, I no longer saw the obedient woman named Barbara I once was. I was no longer the desperate mother seeking approval. Staring back at me was a businesswoman who had built an entire empire on her own. A woman who had never lost a deal. In that empty room, something inside me didn't break. It awakened. Only one thought crossed my mind. If they shut me out the door, I'll pull the floor right out from under them. I rubbed my temples and stared at the laptop screen. The balance had just dropped by a massive amount. The final payment for the luxury house in that upscale neighborhood. That house wasn't for me. It was for Lucia and Anthony, my daughter-in-law Lissa's parents. I sighed, closed the laptop, and leaned back in my office chair. As the head of a high-end home furnishings and decor company, I was used to making million-dollar decisions. But this one was different. The bitterness stayed in my chest. Everything had started 3 months earlier. My son Raphael had come to me, his eyes pleading. Raphael was a good man, but far too obedient to his wife and her family. That evening, he sat beside me, held my hand, and began the same kind of plea I'd heard too many times. Mom Lissa's parents are getting older. Their biggest dream is to have a home worthy of them in their final years. I stayed silent. Worthy. What a vague word. They already had a nice house, but for them, nothing was ever enough. Lucia and Anthony never liked me. To them, I was just a lucky woman who happened to succeed in business. My success made them jealous, not proud. Lissa was even worse. She thought I should hand over all my assets for Raphael and her family to manage. Of course I refused. I had worked my whole life for what I built, and I only spent money on things that made sense. But Raphael was my weakness. "Which house, sweetheart?" I asked. "The one in Maple Ridge Estates, Mom." Lissa's parents already looked at it. "The air there is so fresh," he said, avoiding my eyes. My throat tightened. Maple Ridge Estates was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the region. I knew what it meant. Not just a house, but a miniature mansion. "Son, this is unreasonable. We're in the middle of expanding the business." I tried to reason, "Mom, just this once for Lissa's parents. After this, they won't ask for anything else. I just feel ashamed I can't make them happy." Raphael said, guilt heavy in his voice. And like every time before, my heart softened. I loved my son and always hoped my sacrifices would make Lissa's family finally accept me. And so the house buying process began. I handled everything myself, negotiated with the real estate firm, signed the mortgage, and made the down payment with my own savings. Raphael, Lissa, and her parents only showed up to sign papers, take pictures, and pick wall colors. I felt like a walking wallet. Every time we met, they never asked how I was. Only, "How's the house coming along? When will it be done? Why is it taking so long?" And Lissa would always add in her sharp tone, "Mrs. Barbara, I heard housewarming parties are expensive. Can you handle that? Don't embarrass us in front of our guests." I bit my lip. The housewarming party. That's all they cared about. The next day would be the big event, the grand unveiling of their new home. Ironically, the person who paid for every single thing wasn't included in any of the preparations. They just sent me invoices, luxury catering, imported flowers, custom invitations for Lissa's elite friends. My job was to wire the money. That evening, I went back to the penthouse condo where Raphael had grown up. Lissa moved in after the wedding. I found Raphael, Lissa, and Mrs. Lucia laughing in the living room, picking fabrics for the party staff's uniforms, people I didn't even know. "Oh, Mrs. Barbara, you're back," Lissa said with fake sweetness. Lucia glanced up briefly, then went back to the fabric samples. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. "Perfect, Mom. Tomorrow will be the most elegant party ever," Raphael said, his voice filled with excitement. "Good," I replied quietly. I finished the final payment for the house today. Everything settled. I waited for a simple "thank you." No one smiled. Lucia just nodded curtly. "Well, it was your responsibility anyway," she said coldly, turning back to Raphael. "I think gold looks more sophisticated than silver." "Yes," Lissa added, "our guests will be so impressed." "Mrs. Barbara, you need to make it look proper. After all, it's for your son's happiness." Their words cut like a blade. Responsibility. That's what my millions had become, an obligation. Raphael saw my face and tried to smooth things over. "You must be tired, Mom. Go rest." That was his polite way of pushing me out of the conversation. I nodded and went to my room. I sat on the bed wondering what I was still hoping for. Why did I keep trying to buy acceptance from people who clearly despised me? I left the door slightly open as I changed clothes, needing a bit of air. Then I heard Raphael's voice on the phone. Lucia must have left, and he was talking to Anthony, her husband. Lissa was beside him. "Yes, Dad. Everything's set. Mom transferred the money," Raphael said. I could faintly hear Anoni's voice on the other end. Then Raphael laughed. "Yes, Dad, don't worry. Our plan is safe." Lissa's voice followed. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" "Absolutely. Your mom's too naive. She believes everything you say." My heart froze. "Our plan is safe. Your mom's too naive." Raphael continued. "Good. After the party, you know what to do, right?" My blood ran cold. The unease I had ignored for months surged through me. I wanted to believe I'd misheard, that I was imagining things. But Raphael's low, secretive tone chilled my skin. What plan? What was Anthony supposed to do after the party? The next evening, the housewarming celebration took place. I woke up with my thoughts spinning. That sentence, "You know what to do after," echoed in my mind. I wanted to ask Raphael, but he left early. "Mom, I need to help my in-laws with preparations." "You focus on the store," he said as he slipped on his shoes. "Let me come. I can help check the food or something," I offered. Raphael hesitated. "No, Mom, it's too crowded. You'll just get tired. You're the guest of honor. Just dress up and come tonight," he said, kissing my forehead before leaving. Guest of honor? I almost laughed. What kind of guest of honor knows nothing about the event she's funding? I couldn't focus at the store that day. I stared at the outfit hanging in my office, the silk scarf that matched it perfectly. I wanted to look presentable, not to impress them, but so my son could be proud of me. I had even prepared a special gift, a handcrafted calligraphy piece by a renowned artist, framed in carved wood. It had taken 3 months to commission. That afternoon, I went home early to get ready. On the way, I called Raphael. "Sweetheart, what time are you picking me up? Or should I go on my own? Does my dress match yours?" The phone rang, but no answer. I sent a text. It showed delivered. Maybe he was busy. I tried to stay positive. Then I called Lissa's parents to ask if they needed help. The call was declined. My chest tightened. Why would they refuse? I tried again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. Blocked. No. Maybe they pressed the wrong button. They're older, I told myself. Even though I knew the truth deep down, sitting at my vanity, the soft makeup couldn't hide my exhaustion. My hands shook. A dark feeling filled the room. I called Raphael again, voicemail just like before. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back was beautiful, successful, and desperate. She was begging for the attention of people who never truly wanted her around. I had funded the luxury lives of people who wouldn't even pick up my call. Raphael's voice from last night echoed in my head. You know what to do after the party. Was that Anoni's task and Raphael's? Was my son's task to erase me from his life, once he had drained everything I'd saved once the house was paid off? A chill ran down my spine. No, Raphael loved me. At least he used to. That night, as the party began, I sat alone in my room. The elegant dress still hung in the closet, the expensive gift still on the bed. I felt foolish dressed up for a celebration I paid for, not even sure I was welcome. I took a deep breath. I needed to end this uncertainty. I needed the truth. I opened my phone and typed slowly, carefully, as my heart splintered with each word. Sweetheart, I'm ready. What time are you picking me up? I hit send. A moment later, the status changed to delivered. I stared at the screen, waiting for it to switch to read. 1 minute passed, then 5. The phone felt heavy in my hand. I knew that whatever came next would change everything. The room was silent, only the faint ticking of the clock outside. Under the desk lamp, my message looked pitiful. Then the status changed to read. Raphael had seen it. The phone was in his hand, but he chose not to reply. My anticipation turned to a freezing dread. I could hear every tick of the clock pounding in my chest. Then the phone buzzed. My heart jumped. I unlocked the screen with trembling fingers. A new message from Raphael. Just one short sentence, but enough to shatter every ounce of faith, sacrifice, and pride left in me. Mom, you don't need to come tonight. My in-laws don't want you there. My hands went numb. The shock faded, leaving a deep, crushing ache in my chest, as if someone were squeezing my heart. My in-laws don't want you there. Not sorry the party's postponed. Not sorry they're sick. Just rejection. Cold, deliberate, and cruel. And my own son was the one who sent it. He wasn't just the messenger, he was part of it. Every piece of the puzzle clicked into place the call last night. The secretive tone. You know what to do after the party. So that was Raphael's task, to cut me off cleanly once the money was gone. The house was paid, the party funded. I had outlived my usefulness. I was nothing more than an expired ATM. Memories flooded in. The time I canceled a business trip to Paris to care for Lucia and Anthony when they were sick, only for them to brag to neighbors that their daughter's mother-in-law, a successful businesswoman, could be treated like hired help. The time I bailed out Raphael's failing boutique using the company's emergency fund to cover his debts, while none of them, not even Lissa, said thank you. Lissa only complained, Mrs. Barbara, why didn't you invest sooner? If you had, Raphael would have turned a profit. And all the cruel comments they'd thrown at me, calling me too focused on work, saying I wasn't feminine, even blaming me for their lack of children. The truth was, I had told Raphael to wait until he was financially stable for everyone's sake. And through it all, I swallowed it, every insult, every humiliation, because I loved my son. I once thought Raphael was simply caught between his mother and his wife, but that text message proved otherwise. He wasn't trapped. He had made his choice. And the one cut out was me. Tears burned my eyes, hot and bitter with humiliation. I wanted to scream, to throw everything, to cry until nothing was left. But when I looked in the mirror, the tears stopped. Something else rose inside me, cold, sharp, and steady, like ice melting slowly in my veins. The pain remained, but it had transformed into power. I was no longer the weak woman who cried over her fate. I was Barbara, the woman who built a company from nothing, who negotiated with the toughest clients, who never feared big decisions. And tonight, I would make the hardest yet simplest decision of my life. I was no longer a victim. I was an investor who had just discovered her investment had gone rotten. And what does a smart investor do when she realizes her investment is rotten? She cuts her losses decisively, without hesitation. I picked up the phone that had slipped onto my lap and opened Raphael's message again. "Mom, you don't need to come tonight. My in-laws don't want you there." I read it one more time, not with pain, but with a cold, ironic smile. Staring at my reflection, I whispered to myself, "All right, you brought this on yourselves." I texted back just one short line, "All right, son." I knew Raphael would read it, sigh in relief, and think I had surrendered as usual. He'd go back to the party feeling victorious. I set my personal phone down on the vanity. I wouldn't need it anymore tonight. Then I stood up, walking slowly but firmly toward my desk in the corner, leaving the dress and the gift behind. I sat down, opened a drawer, and took out another phone. My work phone, black sturdy, filled with contacts of people with power. The screen lit up with a photo of me smiling confidently. That was the real Barbara, the CEO, the woman in control. I took a deep breath. I knew that within the next hour I would burn some bridges, but I would rebuild my palace from their ashes. I tapped the first contact in my list, Mr. Martin, my senior financial advisor at the bank, who had managed my accounts for 5 years. "Good evening, Mrs. Barbara. What a surprise to hear from you." After hours, his calm voice answered. "Good evening, Mr. Martin. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I have several urgent requests that must be handled tonight." My voice didn't shake. It carried the clear tone of command. "Of course, Mrs. Barbara. I'm ready." "How can I assist you?" "I want you to immediately cancel all automatic payments and recurring transfers from my account to any accounts related to the house purchase at Maple Ridge Estate Service fees, utilities, anything." "Yes, ma'am. I'll process that right away." "Good." "And one more thing, more important," I continued. "The final payment today, $1,200,000, was transferred to the construction company's account. I want to know whose name is on the purchase contract." Martin typed for a moment, then replied, "The contract is under Mrs. Lucia Turner's name with you. Mrs. Barbara listed as guarantor and primary payer. The entire sum came from your account." "Excellent," I said quietly. "Now contact the bank's legal department. I want that transaction frozen immediately. Review the file for any lawful basis, fraud, coercion, or undue influence, and if the evidence supports it, initiate an emergency hold on the transfer." I heard Martin's breath catch. "Mrs. Barbara, this could be complicated." "The money has already been sent and the contract completed." "I know." I cut him off. "I don't pay you to handle easy things. I'm a priority client, and tonight my priority is to make this transaction a legal problem. I won't sign any transfer of ownership documents." "Understood." "Yes, ma'am. I'll notify the legal team immediately." "Good." "And finally, all supplemental credit cards linked to my main account under the name Raphael, cancel them permanently. Not temporarily, permanently. Cut them off now. That I can do immediately. Ma'am, all of Mr. Raphael's cards will be deactivated." "Good. Email me confirmation within 1 hour." I hung up and moved on. My next call was to Mr. Stevens, the senior sales director at Maple Ridge Estates, who had worked with me throughout the house purchase. "Good evening, Mr. Stevens. This is Barbara, the buyer of property." At 12. "Oh, Mrs. Barbara, good evening. I hope the housewarming party's going well," he said cheerfully. I let out a short, dry laugh. "The party. How interesting, Mr. Stevens," I said calmly. Voice like ice. "I'm the guarantor and primary payer for property. A12. Correct." "Yes, Mrs. Barbara. The entire payment came from your account," he confirmed. I spoke slowly, emphasizing each word. "I've just discovered that my son and his in-laws deceived me. They colluded to take that house." His tone shifted sharply. "I'm sorry." "What did you say? I didn't give him time to react." "I have no time to explain, but as the legal payer, I never consented to the transfer. I am officially withdrawing my approval and will be filing a claim to dispute ownership. Today's transfer was made under coercion." I added a hint of dramatization for effect. "But Mrs. Barbara," he stammered. The payment has gone through and the party is underway. Exactly, I replied firmly. Send your team there right now. Stop the event. Seal the property. It's under legal dispute. If your company hands over the keys to Mrs. Lucia, I will sue Maple Ridge Estates as a co-conspirator in fraud. He went silent for a few seconds, then lowered his voice. All right, ma'am. I'll dispatch our legal and security team immediately. Well, freeze all documentation for A12. I knew that for him, a multi-million-dollar client threatening litigation was a nightmare. The first two moves were done the bank and the developer. Now for the third, I called my company's managing director. Good evening, Mr. Parker. Prepare the termination documents revoking executive privileges for Mr. Raphael Hayes. The white SUV with license plate LMP4778 belongs to the company, correct? Yes, Mrs. Barbara. That's the one issued to your son, he said, surprised. Not anymore. At 6 a.m. tomorrow, have it repossessed wherever it is. Also freeze his payroll account. Raphael no longer works for my company. The title marketing director had been nothing but a gift from me. His real job, none at all. Understood, Mrs. Barbara, Mr. Parker replied, his tone suddenly serious. I set the work phone down. 3 calls. In less than an hour, I had dismantled the foundation of the luxury life Raphael and Lissa's family were about to enjoy. I stood, took off my house clothes, and lost all interest in the evening gown. I went into the bathroom, ran warm water into the tub, and dropped in a lavender bath bomb. My mind needed stillness. As I soaked in the fragrant warmth, my personal phone began buzzing nonstop on the vanity. The screen lit up, Raphael calling. I stared at it, let it ring, then stop. Moments later, it rang again. Lucia declined. Then Raphael again. The phone vibrated furiously against the glass surface, the noise sharp in the quiet room. One call after another, desperate, angry, frantic. I closed my eyes, rested my head on the edge of the tub, and smiled faintly. I didn't touch the phone, let them panic. This was only the beginning. The scent of lavender filled the air as I exhaled in peace. Tonight I would sleep better than ever. At that same moment at Lissa's parents' new house, the party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light over polished marble floors. White and pink leaves filled the air with their soft perfume. Classical music played as champagne glasses clinked and laughter echoed through the grand living room. Lucia, the hostess and Lissa's mother, was the center of attention. She wore a sparkling sequin gown and an elaborate shawl, her face glowing under heavy makeup. Around her stood her wealthy friends, the ones she called her jewelry club. Lucia, is this a house or a palace? One woman gasped. It's stunning. Oh, it's nothing, Lucia said, pretending modesty while flashing her new diamond ring. It's all thanks to Raphael. He knows how to make his in-laws happy. Raphael's the perfect son-in-law. Lissa's so lucky, another woman chimed in. At the mention of my name, Lucia's smile stiffened before she recovered her composure. Oh, Barbara, she works so hard, she said, as if hard work were something shameful. But of course, Raphael's the one guiding her. Without him, Barbara would be nothing. Raphael stood nearby, smiling proudly. He felt like a champion, the perfect husband, the golden son-in-law who made everyone happy. Lissa moved through the crowd, basking in fake compliments, proudly showing off the house she called our family's estate. Raphael glanced at his watch. Nearly an hour had passed since my last message. All right, son. It comforted him. Mom was obedient again. He thought he controlled everything, his mother and his in-laws. Just then, the event manager, Mr. Roberts, approached with a nervous expression, holding a tablet. Excuse me, Mr. Raphael, but the remaining 50% of the event payment needs to be processed tonight. Of course, Raphael said smoothly. pulling out his platinum card, one of the supplementary cards I'd issued him with no limit. Mr. Robert swiped it, waited a few seconds, then frowned. "I'm sorry, sir." The transaction was declined. Raphael chuckled awkwardly. "Must be a network issue. Try again." Mr. Roberts tried again. Same result. Declined. "The system says transaction not permitted." Murmurs spread through the guests. Raphael's face flushed. "I have another card," he said, trying to stay calm. He pulled out a black metal card, another supplementary card from my account. Mr. Roberts tried again. Declined. "Sir, this card's been deactivated." Deactivated? "That's impossible," Raphael nearly shouted. The whispers grew louder. Lissa hurried over. "Raphael, what's going on?" Mr. Roberts spoke plainly. "The total bill is $110,000. If it isn't settled immediately, we'll have to suspend service." Suspend service. "What does that mean?" Raphael barked. "It means we'll stop serving drinks, stop the kitchen. If payment isn't made within 30 minutes, we'll begin clearing the setup." "Are you insane?" Raphael's voice rose, panic taking over. Lucia noticed the tension and came over. "Raphael, what's happening? Why does Mr. Roberts look upset?" "His cards were declined, ma'am," Mr. Roberts said bluntly. "The party hasn't been paid for." Lucia's eyes widened. "What, Raphael? Why isn't it paid, Larissa? Don't you have another card? I thought Raphael handled it." Lissa stammered. Right then, chaos deepened. The music stopped abruptly. Guests turned toward the main entrance. 3 men in black suits walked in. They weren't guests. The man in the middle was Mr. Stevens. His voice carried through the room. "Apologies for the interruption. I'm Stevens' sales manager at Maple Ridge Estates. I'm looking for Mrs. Lucia Turner and Mr. Raphael Hayes." All eyes turned to them. "What's going on, Mr. Stevens?" Raphael asked, voice shaking. "There's a serious administrative issue," he said. "We just received notice from the bank and our legal team. The primary payer and guarantor for property, A12 Mrs. Barbara Hayes, has withdrawn her consent for the transaction. This house is now under legal dispute. Today's payment has been frozen by the bank." The room fell silent. Lissa clutched her husband's arm, trembling. "Raphael, what did your mother do?" Lucia went pale as death. "A dispute. That can't be." "What are we supposed to do? This party is over," Stevens said firmly. "By regulation, all guests must leave immediately. The property will be sealed until the case is resolved." Chaos erupted. Elegant guests scattered, whispering, scoffing. The glamorous evening collapsed in an instant. Raphael shouted, grabbing his phone to call me. It rang. No answer again. No answer. "Mom, pick up," he yelled. Lucia snatched the phone. "Let me try. She'll answer me." She called declined again. Voicemail. Lissa tried too, voice shaking. "Mrs. Barbara, please pick up." In my peaceful bathroom surrounded by lavender-scented steam, my phone kept lighting up on the vanity. Raphael, then Lucia, then Lissa, then Raphael again. The ringtone echoed through the quiet, desperate, insistent. I rested my head on the edge of the tub and smiled. Meanwhile, in the house, now under legal dispute, chaos reigned. The elite guests who had flattered Lucia minutes ago now rushed out in panic, eager to distance themselves from the chaos. Their once glowing faces twisted into a mix of shock, pity, and cruel delight. My God, how humiliating to have the place sealed like that one woman whispered as she hurried to the parking lot. I knew it. How could she afford such a house? It must have been her daughter's mother-in-law footing the bill, and now she's furious and pulled the plug. Serves them right. I have to snap a photo of this place being shut down. Another replied, rushing to take out her phone. Lucia stood frozen on the marble porch, the same place that just minutes earlier had been her stage of triumph. Her whole body trembled not from the cold, but from fury and humiliation. The glamorous gown she wore now looked like a costume. Thick makeup streamed down her face with cold sweat. "Raphael, why isn't she answering?" Lucia screamed, her voice sharp and panicked. "This is all your fault. Why did you send that text? Why did you tell her not to come?" She glared at Raphael as he kept dialing. Those careless words, shouted in front of everyone, including the legal team and catering staff, were the final blow. Mr. Stevens, the representative from Maple Ridge Estates, raised an eyebrow. "So it's true. You deliberately barred the primary payer from attending the very event she financed. That strengthens Mrs. Barber's legal case. Mind your own business," Lucia shrieked, then turned to Raphael. "Keep calling. Tell her to come fix this. Tell them it's a misunderstanding." "I tried." "She's not answering." Raphael stammered, his face burning with shame and fear. Lissa sobbed, clutching his arm. "Raphael, do something. Call again. Beg if you have to." While they argued, Mr. Roberts, the event manager, gestured to his staff pack up. The command was short, but firm. The waiters who once smiled politely moved even faster now, collecting trays, stacking dirty plates. Skewered lamb, lobster, roasted salmon, still untouched, were covered and wheeled away. Bartenders unplugged espresso machines and gathered every bottle of wine and syrup. They worked swiftly and efficiently, packing everything according to the contract. "Hey, what are you doing?" Lucia screamed. "That food's been paid for." "Sorry, no ma'am," Mr. Roberts replied with mocking politeness. "Payment was declined, which means under contract. Everything belongs to us, including the leftovers. Some servers even rolled up the tablecloths, leaving bare wooden tables exposed like stripped bones." In moments, the luxurious celebration became a scene of ruin. Lucia stood motionless, staring at her dismantled grandeur. Lissa collapsed into a chair, covering her face and sobbing. "Oh God, what do we do now? This is a nightmare." As the catering team exited, the construction company's team entered. Mr. Stevens pulled out a roll of bright yellow tape. "Mr. Raphael, Miss Lucia, Miss Lissa," he announced clearly. "I'm sorry, but you must vacate the property until this matter is resolved. The house is now under bank supervision. Please collect only essential personal belongings. You have 5 minutes." But they had nothing left to take except their shattered pride. Dressed in their formal attire, the three of them trudged down the marble steps. Behind them, security guards sealed the front door with a large notice: "Property under legal dispute." Another worker locked the iron gate with a new padlock. Now Lucia, Raphael, and Lissa stood on the curb outside the dream house. The garden light still glowed, illuminating their pale, stunned faces. Cars sped past without slowing. This is a dream, isn't it, Raphael?" Lucia stammered before sinking to the sidewalk, her expensive gown collecting dust. Raphael said nothing, eyes fixed on his phone screen. Dozens of missed calls, dozens of messages, all marked with 2 gray check marks. He typed furiously, "Mom, please pick up. This has gotten out of hand. Lissa's parents are panicking. What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Mom, answer me." Message after message, no reply. Anger, fear, and despair tangled together. Lissa sat beside him, trembling and crying. "Mom, what do we do now?" In my apartment, I stepped out of the bathroom, wearing a soft cotton pajama, set my hair wrapped in a towel. I picked up my still vibrating phone and scrolled through Raphael's frantic messages: anger, panic, desperation. I read them calmly, then typed slowly. "What's wrong, son? Didn't Lissa's parents say they didn't want me to come?" I hit send. Delivered. Appeared. On the cold sidewalk in front of the sealed house, Raphael's phone buzzed. All 3 of them leaned in, clinging to a final shred of hope. They read together, "What's wrong, son? Didn't Lissa's parents say they didn't want me to come?" Silence fell. At that moment, they understood this wasn't a bank glitch or a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, calculated revenge. I knew everything. I had prepared for this. Raphael's face shifted from fear to horror. Lucia turned as white as marble, eyes wide with pure panic. Lissa wept uncontrollably, clinging to her husband. They had awakened a sleeping dragon. The once lively street outside Maple Ridge Estates was now cold and empty, the opposite of its earlier splendor. Lucia, Raphael, and Lissa stood by the gate looking like beggars dressed in designer clothes. They tried calling for a cab, but cars passed without stopping. After half an hour of humiliation, a rideshare finally pulled up. The ride was silent. Raphael sat in the front typing desperate messages. Lucia and Lissa sat in the back, faces pale as chalk. Lissa sobbed quietly, pressing her forehead against the window, her elegant gown clinging to her sweat-dampened skin. The driver glanced at them in the mirror but said nothing. "Where to?" he asked softly as the car left the neighborhood. Raphael didn't answer. He had no idea where to go, to Lucia's old rundown house in the suburbs, or to my apartment. To Pearl Residences, Lucia croaked. "We have to see her. She has to stop this." Raphael nodded, still thinking I'd soften, that I'd forgive him. Lissa wiped her tears. "Let me talk to her," she whispered. "She's still my mother-in-law. She won't be cruel." When they arrived at the building, Raphael swiped his access card. "Red light." He tried again. Still red. "No way," he muttered. "What now?" Lucia snapped. "My card's been deactivated." A security guard approached. "Sorry, Mr. Raphael. Your access has been revoked at the request of the apartment owner. The owner, she's my mother." Raphael barked. "Sorry, sir. Rules are rules. We have to call Mrs. Barbara for permission before allowing you and the ladies upstairs." Lucia's face flushed red with humiliation. Evicted from the new house, now needing permission to enter what she once considered her son-in-law's home, Lissa gripped Raphael's hand, trembling. "This can't be happening." The guard pressed the intercom button. "Good evening, Mrs. Barbara. This is security. Mr. Raphael, Mrs. Lissa, and Mrs. Lucia are in the lobby. Do you want to let them up?" Silence followed. Raphael held his breath. If I said no, it would all end right there. I inhaled slowly, then replied through the speaker, calm and clear. "Let them up. I'm waiting." Raphael exhaled in relief. "See, she's waiting for us." He pulled his wife and mother-in-law into the elevator. They adjusted their clothes, wiped their faces, ready for confrontation. When the elevator doors opened on the penthouse floor, Raphael saw my door slightly ajar. He pushed it open, shouting, "Mom, what is going on?" I sat calmly on the sofa, dressed in soft cotton pajamas, my hair still wrapped in a towel. A steaming cup of ginger tea sat on the table before me. I felt peaceful at ease, as if I had just finished a spa session in my own home. The contrast between us was stark. I was composed and clean, while Raphael, Lissa, and Lucia looked disheveled, exhausted faces twisted with anger. "Sit down," I said quietly, my voice steady as still water. "Sit down," Lucia shouted, stepping forward. "After what you've done, you dare order us around. Do you even realize what you've done?" Lissa moved closer, tears streaming down her face. "Mrs. Barbara, please. This must be a misunderstanding. You can't treat us like this." "Mom, I don't know what game you're playing, but you've gone too far," Raphael said, voice trembling between anger and fear. "You humiliated us in front of everyone. You canceled my credit cards. You had my in-laws' house sealed. Have you lost your mind?" I looked straight into my son's eyes, searching for any trace of the boy I once loved. But there was nothing, only fear and selfishness. Lost my mind. I finally spoke, my tone low but cutting. "Then tell me, son, who's really insane? Me, the mother who worked herself to the bone to pay for your dream house, Or you the ones living off my money while mocking me behind my back?" Raphael stayed silent. "You say I humiliated you." I let out a faint laugh. "Weren't Liz's parents the ones who said they didn't want me there? I only followed their wishes. I didn't show up. I simply took back what was mine." "What's yours?" Lucia shouted. "Nothing here belongs to you. It's all thanks to Raphael, my son-in-law. Without him, you're nothing. His property is yours." I stared at her, the smile fading my voice, now cold and precise. "Let's talk facts, Mrs. Lucia. I built my company 6 years before Raphael was even born. I bought this apartment outright long before your daughter married my son. The cars in the garage are registered under my business, and that luxury house you brag about 100% paid with my money. So tell me, where exactly is your son-in-law's contribution?" Lucia's mouth fell open. She couldn't speak. Lissa collapsed to her knees, crying. "Mrs. Barbara, please forgive us. You've always been like a mother to me." "Mom, stop," Raphael said, his tone softening, pleading now. "I know I was wrong." "I'm sorry about the message." Lissa's parents pressured me. "You know how they are, but you didn't have to take it this far. Call the bank. Call the developers. Tell them it was all a mistake. We can fix this." I looked at him and said firmly, "There's nothing to fix. That message wasn't a mistake. It was the truth." A truth that finally opened my eyes. I stood walking toward the door where 3 large suitcases and 2 travel bags sat. Raphael recognized them immediately. "It's done," I said. "I'm ending this show. I'm no longer your wallet." I nudged the suitcases toward them. "These are your things. Everything I allow you to take. Clothes, watches, shoes, Lissa's jewelry." Raphael stared at me. "Mom, are you kicking us out?" Lissa clutched the luggage, sobbing. "Mrs. Barbara, please don't do this." I shook my head. "Not kicking you out, just sending you back to where you belong. This is my apartment bought with my own hard work. I don't want to share my air with people who plotted against me." "Liar," Lucia screamed. "We used your money. You're the one who banned yourself from the party you paid for. If that's not fraud, what is?" I pointed at the door. "Leave all 3 of you." "Mom, please," Raphael begged, grabbing my hand. I pulled away as if burned. "Don't touch me." My voice rose for the first time. "Your car will be repossessed at 6:00 a.m. Your credit cards are canceled. Tomorrow my lawyer will deliver the documents severing our family ties." "No, Mom, you can't." Raphael's voice cracked. Lissa dropped to the floor, clutching my legs, sobbing. "Mrs. Barbara, please, well, change. Well, better." I gave a cold smile. "You can stay in your new house." "Oh, wait. It's still sealed." I opened the door and pointed outward. "Go." Lucia looked at her silent son and crying daughter, then lunged at me. I caught her wrist and squeezed hard. "Don't ever touch me in my own home," I said quietly, teeth clenched. "Leave, or I'll call security." My glare stopped her cold. Raphael trembled as he dragged the suitcases. Lissa stood still, shaking her eyes red and swollen. They looked at me one last time, hoping for mercy, but all they saw was steel in my eyes. They stepped out. "Good night, Raphael. Good night, Lissa. Good night, Mrs. Lucia," I said, then closed the door and locked both bolts. The metallic clicks echoed in the hallway. They stood outside in the bright corridor, surrounded by their luggage. They had nowhere they were willing to go and no way to pay for a hotel. Raphael slammed his hand against the wall, shouting, "Mom, open the door, we can talk." Lissa sank to the floor, hugging her suitcase, sobbing uncontrollably. Inside, silence. That night dragged on in silence with their suitcases lined up like witnesses. Returning to Lucia's old suburban house was humiliating, but it was their only choice. A hotel with what card every account was frozen. The small cash in Raphael's wallet barely covered the taxi fare. They reached the old house after midnight. It had been empty for weeks, stale and coated in dust. Still wearing her evening gown, Lucia shouted, "This is all your fault, Raphael. If you'd acted like a man." Instead of depending on her money, she poured her fury onto her son-in-law, forgetting she was the greediest of all. "You forced me to send that message," Raphael yelled back. "You said you couldn't stand seeing her at the party." Lissa sat curled in a corner, hugging her knees, crying. "Stop it. Fighting won't change anything." Their argument echoed through the dusty room, surrounded by expensive suitcases that now looked ridiculous. Finally, they each retreated to cramped rooms, drowning in bitterness and guilt. The next morning, reality hit harder. Raphael woke to the sound of a ringing phone. Not a call, but his alarm. 6 a.m. He jumped up, remembering the car. He ran outside to see his white SUV parked by the curb. Two large men stood beside a tow truck. Mr. Raphael Hayes were from the company's asset recovery department. "Mrs. Barbara requested that we repossess this vehicle," one of the men said, handing over official papers. Raphael froze, then helplessly handed them the keys. The car that had once been his pride was hooked onto the tow truck and taken away. He had nothing left. Lissa came outside, and the moment she saw it, she burst into tears. But the blows didn't stop there. Near noon, as the three of them sat in the kitchen eating a bland breakfast of watered-down oatmeal, a delivery man knocked on the door. "Excuse me. I have mail for Mr. Raphael Hayes and Mrs. Lucia Turner." Raphael lazily got up to take the two thick brown envelopes, one for him, one for his mother-in-law. Lucia tore hers open, first, her eyes widening. "Maple Ridge Estates." She read aloud, then fell silent. It was an official notice due to the legal dispute filed by the primary payer, Barbara Hayes. The purchase contract had been voided. The property was being repossessed by the developer. The large deposit had been forfeited to cover breach penalties and damages from the canceled event. The house, my house. Lucia whispered, her knees buckling as she grabbed the door frame to keep from collapsing. Raphael didn't hear her. He was tearing open his own envelope. The letterhead of a major law firm made his stomach twist. The bold title read, "Notice of Family Severance and Revocation of Inheritance Rights." He read each page with trembling hands. It wasn't emotional. It was a full legal document complete with a demand for restitution of all unjust enrichment. My lawyer and I had prepared it carefully. It detailed my termination of all financial support to my son for acts of disrespect, deceit, and financial exploitation. The appendix ran dozens of pages containing bank statements showing millions of dollars transferred from my accounts to Raphael's proof of house payments invoices for parties and documents proving my ownership of the apartment and company assets long before Raphael was an adult. The demand was clear. I declared a total separation of assets, making everything I owned untouchable. As for Raphael, who owned almost nothing, he could keep what little he had. But the final clause was the fatal blow. Every sum and privilege he had received from me would now be considered personal debt owed to my company. Raphael sank to the porch floor, his face pale as chalk. He understood I hadn't just cut him off. I had buried his financial future down to the roots. "Raphael, what does it say?" Lucia asked, her voice shaking as she saw her son-in-law's lifeless expression. Raphael said nothing, only handed her the letter. Lucia read it, not understanding all the legal terms, but the words, "revocation of inheritance and restitution demanded," froze her blood. Lissa peeked over her mother's shoulder, tears welling again. Lucia's anger flared, but this time she knew rage wouldn't help. She needed a new strategy. Her voice lowered, her eyes narrowing in calculation. No, she can't do this. She still loves Raphael. She's just angry. If she's angry, we'll make her calm down. Angry? She destroyed us, Raphael snapped. Then, well, Make her soften, Lucia said. A wild idea flickered in her mind. Well, apologize. I'll kneel to her if I must. I'll cry. She won't be able to stand seeing an old woman on her knees. Raphael looked at his mother-in-law and instantly understood it wouldn't be a real apology, just another performance. But what choice did they have? Lissa wiped her tears. I'll go too. I'll beg. She's my mother-in-law. She'll feel pity. That afternoon, the three of them dressed modestly. Lucia deliberately left her hair messy and her scarf untied to look pitiful. They took a taxi to my company's headquarters. The building gleamed, modern, luxurious, spotless. The receptionist saw them enter and quickly stepped forward. I'm sorry. May I ask who you're here to see? Raphael said. I want to see Mrs. Barbara. She's my mother. The young woman typed quickly, then replied firmly, I'm sorry, but the names, Mr. Raphael Hayes, Mrs. Lissa Hayes, and Mrs. Lucia Turner, are on the restricted list. You are not permitted entry. What Raphael slammed his hand on the counter. On. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. I stepped out with two of my executives wearing a navy blazer, my expression calm and sharp as if nothing had happened. I was chatting with my COO, smiling lightly. When Lucia saw me, she rushed forward and dropped to her knees. Mrs. Barbara, please forgive me, she cried, clutching my legs. The lobby fell silent. People stopped and whispered. I was wrong. I regret everything. Please don't abandon Raphael and Lissa. They've suffered enough. Look at us. Please have mercy. Lissa followed suit, kneeling beside her, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mrs. Barbara, please. I'll be a better daughter-in-law. Just give us one more chance. Raphael stood behind them, feigning anguish, trying to look pitiful. I stopped. My smile vanished. Looking down at the three kneeling before me, I felt no pity, only disgust. I exhaled, then turned to my director. Mr. Paul calls security. Mrs. Barbara, I'm Lissa's mother. You know me. Lucia cried louder. I looked her straight in the eyes. I know you. That's exactly why I know what kind of person you are. You have no heart, Lucia shouted, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't touch me. My mother taught me about dignity and honesty. You only understand money. Two security guards approached immediately. I spoke calmly, my tone professional again. Please escort these three individuals out of the building and ensure they're permanently barred from entry. Yes, Mrs. Barbara. As the guards grabbed her arms, Lucia screamed, You'll pay for this. You'll end up alone. Her face twisted with rage, her performance breaking into hysteria. She kicked and cursed while Lissa wept as she was dragged away. Raphael just lowered his head in shame. He looked at me one last time, but I didn't respond. I adjusted my blazer and turned back to my colleague, continuing our conversation as if nothing had happened. As Lucia was pulled through the glass doors, she yelled her final curse. You'll regret this, Barbara. You'll die alone. The door closed, and her voice vanished. Inside the elevator, I smiled faintly. I was long past regret. This was freedom. The months that followed were hell for Raphael, Lissa, and her family. After being publicly thrown out of my company, they returned to the cramped suburban house they had once scorned while chasing wealth. Now it felt like a suffocating cage. News of the failed party, the seized mansion, and their public humiliation in my lobby spread across the city. The same high society friends who once praised Lucia now mocked her. Lucia. Oh, you mean the lawsuit lady? Heard she's living in a dump now. Serves her right. Acting rich with her mother-in-law's money. For someone who thrived on admiration, Lucia's collapse was total. She locked herself in her room, refusing to eat or face the neighbors. Shame and stress ruined her health. Her blood pressure spiked. Her diabetes worsened. The once glittering woman now lay frail in bed, wrapped in a faded nightgown, moaning in self-pity. Raphael tried to survive. His small savings money I had once given him ran out quickly. He had to find work, but what could he do? The title marketing director at my company had always been an empty gesture. He had no real skills. He applied everywhere, padding his resume with fake accomplishments. A few companies called him for interviews, but each ended in disaster. One HR manager asked, "You claim to have increased export sales by 200%. What strategy did you use?" Raphael stammered. Hard work and tracking trends." "Which trends?" "Online internet trends." The recruiter smiled politely and closed the folder. "We'll be in touch," which meant never. After dozens of rejections, Raphael grew desperate. From director to manager, then supervisor, then staff, every attempt failed. Finally, he took whatever he could get. Driving for a rideshare company, renting a car each day at a steep cost. The life of luxury designer watches, fine dining, and imported suits was now just a memory. He spent hours in a smoke-scented car waiting for fares, barely making enough for gas and groceries. Lissa also found work as a sales clerk in a mall clothing store. The pay was low, the hours long, and the customers rude. The woman who once expected to be served now had to serve others. The small house soon turned into a battlefield. Lucia, sick and irritable, lashed out. Raphael and Lissa, exhausted, argued constantly. "Raphael, where's the money? I'm out of medicine." "Can't you even buy my pills?" Lucia complained. Money, money, money. "You think it's easy," Raphael shouted, throwing his keys on the table. "I drive from morning to night and barely make enough for rice and eggs. You weren't like this when Barbara was around. You used to be a perfect son-in-law." Hearing my name made the vein in his neck twitch. "Enough, Lucia. This is your fault. If you hadn't been greedy, if you hadn't insulted her, we wouldn't be here. How dare you blame me? You're the useless one." Lissa tried to intervene but ended up crying alone in her room. Her glamorous dream had crumbled into daily shouting and misery. To survive, they started selling whatever was left. Furniture, fake jewelry, even Lissa's evening gown. One by one, their possessions disappeared. As for me, I simply reclaimed what was mine. Everything belonged to me, so Raphael left my life empty-handed with only a few suitcases and a mountain of debts my lawyers were now actively collecting. One afternoon, after a long day of driving for small change, Raphael pulled the rental car to the side of the road. Exhausted and hungry, he opened his phone, scrolling to escape reality. Then he saw a headline from a major business network. A video interview appeared, and there I was. I wore a sleek business outfit, a silk scarf, elegantly tied around my neck. I was being interviewed on a prestigious business program. "Congratulations, Mrs. Barbara." The host said, "We've heard your company just signed the year's largest export deal with a luxury design house in Milan." On screen, I smiled calmly, radiating confidence. "Thank you. This success belongs to the entire team. We've just launched an eco-friendly modular furniture line made from recycled materials, and the European market has responded incredibly well." The host continued, "You're seen as an inspiration, successful and happy. What's your secret, especially after such difficult personal experiences?" I laughed softly. Difficult, I don't see it that way. It was more like cleansing. Sometimes you have to clear out what no longer belongs in your life so you can finally breathe again. My secret is simple. Focus on what you can control and let go of what has become a burden. Raphael turned off the screen, his hands trembling. Take out the trash, let go of the burden. He knew exactly whom I meant. Him and Lissa's family. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel, not out of anger toward me, but toward himself. He had once held a diamond in his hands, but threw it away chasing an empty mansion. Now he had nothing. While I appeared on television glowing under studio lights, Raphael, the man who once called himself a director, sat hungry and broken in a hot rental car. Karma, at last, had completed its circle. A year passed since that disastrous housewarming night. For Raphael, Larissa, and their family, it had been a year of suffering. For me, 365 days of freedom and rebirth. 6 months ago, the court ruled fully in my favor. The asset separation went smoothly. My ownership documents were indisputable. Raphael tried to fight for company rights but only ended up humiliated. His lawyer couldn't prove a single real contribution. While my legal team easily demonstrated the millions he had siphoned from the company without working, he left the courtroom a completely defeated man. Now freed from the weight of that toxic relationship, I poured all my energy into 2 things: my work and my personal happiness. The results surpassed anything I had imagined. The eco-friendly modular furniture line, the very one Raphael had seen on his phone, exploded across international markets. I opened 2 additional factories and hired hundreds of workers. I didn't just recover. I soared higher than ever before. I remained a kind woman, but now I carried an unshakable confidence and strength within me. I no longer hesitated when making decisions, nor lived to please anyone else. I finally understood that my worth did not depend on anyone's approval, especially not that of my son or the family who had once hurt me. To celebrate both my company's success and the day I reclaimed my freedom, I held a gratitude ceremony, not the kind of shallow, ostentatious party Lucia had always dreamed of, but a warm gathering at the orphanage I had quietly supported for years. During the time I was being exploited by their greed, it was that place that had given me real peace. The hall was decorated simply but beautifully. No imported flowers, no luxury catering, just balloons, sweet pastries, and boxes of hot, fragrant food. My guests of honor weren't from the upper class. They were the children from the orphanage laughing and playing with the devoted caregivers. I wore a simple but elegant outfit, sat cross-legged on the floor with the kids, feeding them spoonfuls of food, smiling at their innocent chatter. There was no burden on my face anymore, only serenity. When I spoke, I said, "Today I'm not standing here as a director, but as a woman who wants to thank life. This past year has taught me many things, especially about letting go. Sometimes the best thing we can do is release the past, release those who wounded our hearts, because only with empty hands can we receive new blessings." The ceremony ended with a prayer. I donated a large sum to renovate the entire orphanage. The administrators and children were moved to tears, offering me endless blessings. Meanwhile, across town, in front of an old building with a faded sign that read, "Calm Community Kitchen-Loving Fridays," a long line of people waited, worn-out faces, tattered clothes. Among them were 3 familiar figures, Lucia, Raphael, and Lissa. They had truly fallen into poverty. After Raphael lost his rideshare job for failing to pay the car rental fees, and Lissa was fired for missing too many days, the family survived only on the neighbors' pity. Now they stood in line for free meals. "Hurry up, Raphael, I'm starving," Lucia grumbled, her voice weak, yet still sharp. "Be patient." "The line's long," Raphael replied flatly. Lissa kept her head down, silent, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The woman who once dreamed of grand parties now waited for a charity meal. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't been so stupid, if you just kept quiet, things would be different," Lucia snapped. "Enough!" Raphael interrupted for the first time. His voice wasn't angry, just weary. "Stop talking. It doesn't matter anymore. Just wait." Lucia stared at him, startled by that tone. Then she looked around the line, looked at Lissa, and understood. It was over. There was no one left to blame. This was the end of everything. As for me, after the ceremony ended, I took a walk through the orphanage garden, breathing in the soft evening breeze. My assistant approached. "Mrs. Barbara, your car is ready. The interview with the International magazine is at 5 under p.m. I nodded, glancing up at the sky painted in shades of gold and orange. A deep sense of peace filled me. I had forgiven my son and his old family not because they deserved it, but because I needed to release every trace of poison from the past. As I walked toward the car, I remembered how hard I had once fought to buy them a house, only to be repaid with humiliation. I smiled softly. I once fought to buy them a house, I thought as I opened the door. But God gave me something far more precious, a palace no one can ever seal off. A palace called freedom. I sat down, adjusted my silk scarf, and drove away toward a future I had built with my own hands. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think I was right to cut my son and his family out of my life? If you were in my place, would you have done things differently? Share your thoughts below. And if this story made you reflect on boundaries, family, and self-respect, write, "I choose freedom, so I'll know you walked with me until the very last moment of this journey."